Hey, welcome to the Coalesce podcast, episode 4. My name's Grant.
And I'm Meg.
And we finished up all the stuff from last time. We had to rework a couple of things with respect to the seeder and all that. We just kind of took a little bit of time to get that set up. It's worth your time to do the seeder so that you can really easily go back and forth, wipe out your database whenever you need to and all that kind of stuff. So eventually when a project gets going, you can't just do that willy-nilly, but early on, it makes it really fast. So what we want to do is just build a page, our very first page, that is going to list out our questions and the answers. Let's just start there.
Yeah, I think I have to let me fix my camera real quick on Teams.
It's you're on the camera thing. Well, we can just start ours. Sorry, it's cutting off. Like, stop doing that.
I have it's so annoying. So many things.
And this isn't even like a highbrow podcast.
Okay, start again.
Hey, welcome to the Coalesce podcast. My name's Grant.
And I'm Meg.
And last time we fixed up our seeder and did a bunch of stuff that's going to allow us just to move a little more quickly as we go through this. We wanted today jump in and create a new page that is going to show us the questions and the answers. And Megan and I kind of worked out a few of the details ahead of time, but we're just going to try to get that out and kind of walk through the process of what that looks like. So Meg, what do we need to get? We have this one page. What do we need to do?
Yeah, so first thing is first, this custom page isn't going to work anymore because if you remember from a couple videos ago, we deleted our widget that came with.
This is the one to get right out of the box.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need this.
And this is hardwired to that widget, so
we need to get rid of all that stuff. So let's go ahead and take care of clean that up.
Yeah. So go ahead and open VS Code. And I like to use VS Code for coding with Beautify and Vue and TypeScript. Just it's a better environment than Visual Studio.
Yeah, all the front end stuff is anytime you're dealing with JavaScript, HTML, CSS.
Yeah.
VS Code just has a better experience.
Much more lightweight. And Visual Studio is great, but it's really where it really shines like debugging. And typically with JavaScript, you're
debugging on the front end, so it's
doing
it's
it
like
in the browser.
And there are some ways to do that, and there's some cool features where you can debug through VS Code and all that. But so we basically what we end up doing when we're building these pieces, building apps like this, the C# code we're building in Visual Studio, and all the front end stuff we're building in VS Code. And so you have kind of the whole solution open in the background in Visual Studio, and then just that web project open. Inside of VS Code.
Yeah, and then Coalesce should recommend a couple of extensions for you. This is kind of the main one you want, but it'll recommend a couple when you start up your project.
These are the ones that you like to do.
Yeah.
So these are kind of our recommendations. If you're going to go and install a bunch of stuff, it's just kind of what to get the experience that we have, and also Copilot.
Yeah,
we're
Copilot.
Also using both in Visual Studio and VS Code. GitHub Copilot.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're just going to delete some of these widget files.
Just whack widgets.
This is actually a test class. We can maybe get back to testing at some point, but we are not going to do it right now. And let's add a new file called maybe questions.
Questions, yeah. And .vue, that's just the name of the files, and those are going to get compiled down by the whole Vue ecosystem and created in HTML files, and all the backend files get created for us.
And then we're going to get rid of that route path, and I'm going to put a new router path in here.
So this is in a router.ts, which is this TypeScript files that outlines how all the routing for the application happens. Now, if you're using something like Nuxt, Nuxt is going to do this for you. We are not using Nuxt. We do not have an automatic set of routing components, and so it doesn't automatically route to the pages that you create in your views folder. So we have to do this. So it's just you're gonna say what the path is. That's what you're gonna put on your bar, and then the name of that route, and then what actual file you're going to use to serve that up. In this case, the questions.vue file.
Yep. So this is all hooked up in our router. I just want to go over to our app.vue and put a button on our main page. So instead of widget, we're going to.
This is that little list on the side. So
this is our your little nav toolbar.
Great, and that's why we have to. Do we have to take off? You take off? Or you're just replacing.
Yeah, I'm just going to replace
the widget with this. So if you wanted to copy and paste this and make another list item. And all these B dash, this is all the Beautify stuff.
Yep.
So as you see all that, you're always looking at Beautify things. Go check Beautify documentation if you want to do that. We're going to get into a little bit that hopefully near the end of this episode, but we'll be talking about that more and more as we move forward.
Yep. Oh, and then so you can see here, I've got my question page all hooked up, but then we never actually put anything on this page.
So it doesn't do anything, right?
So it's just mad that we don't have something here.
So this is really the only rule for either a page or a /view or a component is that you just have a template.
There's our
questions.
Now, if we come back to here and refresh and hit questions,
boom.
There we go.
It's just all everyone ever wanted in a page.
Yep, that's all you need.
Okay, so now let's talk about it. So what we want to do is right now, this is just simple stuff. Let's go grab our list of questions and just display all the questions.
Yep. First things first, we need to make a script tag. So we are going to be using something called the composition API. So there's the composition API and the options API. And the composition API is the newer kind of version.
And that uses the setup, right?
Yep, that uses
really,
the setup.
It's script. It's just a regular script tag like in an HTML document.
Yep.
Then you have the setup tag.
Yep.
And then you have the language is TypeScript.
Yeah, and you actually can make this set up into a function right inside of your script. Otherwise, it's just going to kind of run top to bottom.
Yep. And this is really nice because it literally just runs top to bottom, and that's it. It's super, super simple how things get set up.
Yeah, which is kind of the preferable way, in my opinion. So super easy calling APIs with Coalesce. So if you think about how you traditionally call APIs, is you'd probably use something like Axios or just some kind of NPM package to make those API calls to make it easier. And you would write probably some service class that Axios would, all your Axios stuff would be in, and then you'd write some DTOs to kind of represent your objects on the back end and on the front end. And there's all this work that goes into it. We're going to make this API call with 2 lines of code. So first line, going to put a variable here, and we're going to say questions equals new, question list view model. You can see I've got autocomplete there. So it auto imports from this viewModel.g. That's our Coalesce generated files. And then questions dot $load. And now when I save, you should see here in my network tab, here are my questions coming up. So we only have one question, but it loads up my question, loads up my answers, and it shows my correct answer.
Nice.
Yep. So what's happening here is we have our question list view model. You'll actually notice we have something called a question view model as well here from our view models. And these are kind of what they look like, view models. And they're just we have models and we have view models. Models are kind of the representation of the
just
actual
the basic
question.
really just takes the POCO and it builds it out in TypeScript.
Yeah.
Like the C# POCO just builds it in TypeScript.
The view model has all the stuff that you want to use on it, like all the functions like loading, deleting, saving. So that's really what it's used for. So you're typically using view models whenever you're doing any kind of API interactions.
Cool. Yep. And these view models will then, in this case, a list will have a collection of question view models on top of it. But those can also just be referenced as a question because the question view models derive from the question class. So you can just speed them super easily.
Exactly.
Okay, so now we can literally just go and use the regular view stuff and iterate. And so can we just show all the questions? Maybe it's going to show us here.
Yeah. So let's do some view stuff here. So first of all, just since we're going to do view stuff, let's wrap this in something called a container because it'll.
View.
Actually, should we do view or Viewify? Maybe we can come back.
Let's just do straight.
Okay.
Let's just
we'll make it easy.
HTML first. Like just use some divs and stuff like that.
We'll make it easy. Simple. All right. So here's our div. We're going to make a v4. This is view. And in this v4, we're going to say question in questions. And you can see here, I have to do dot items because, like I said, this has a bunch of functions on it, and items is going to get you that list.
And it's dollar because everything that is internal to Coalesce has a $.
Yep.
It's kind of a standard.
It's kind of a standard view thing.
Now, the key is something that has to be unique for that particular object. This is a view thing.
Yeah.
So it can do rendering efficiently.
Yep. And it has to be unique, not just for this for loop. It has to be unique for the page. So if you have 2 for loops on the page.
Oh, they have to all be unique.
Unique for each for loop.
Know which one it is. Okay.
Yep. So you can do a couple things here. You can do question.question ID. But
which also GUIDs, which is probably okay, but there's maybe some reason not to do that with respect to when they get created and all that.
And you can have some nullability warnings that are just annoying. The other option is Coalesce has something called a stable ID that is built in pretty much just for this specific use case, just for a nice unique key.
And it's just a unique key that, and even if you create a new object, it hasn't been saved yet.
Yeah.
And once it gets saved, you're still going to have the same stable ID. Which now, if you reload the page, you're going to get a new stable ID. But
that's fine
for the longevity of the base objects, they're going to stay. It's the same.
So that is what I typically like.
Now, literally, you can now throw those like in an H2 or something like that.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't quite know what we want.
We can get rid of that part for now.
So Copilot is attempting to be helpful, but it's not super helpful.
Okay, so we save it. Hey, look at that. What's the capital of France? Right there. Boom.
There we go. Now we just need the question, the answer.
We just have to iterate again, right?
Yep. So one more iteration. So let's just do another div. Or actually, let's do a list, right? That might make some more sense here. And then let's do v4 equals answer in. If you remember earlier from that network call, we have our list of answers.
So how this works is that because we loaded the list of questions, Coalesce will automatically load one set of objects down by default. Now we'll show you how to change that using something called a data source. You can modify how much stuff it loads, but by default, we're going to get, because if you remember, we have the question, we have the correct answer, which is an object, so it'll load that, and it's also going to load the list of answers, but it's not going to load anything below that.
Yep.
So it's that kind of automatically gets you just kind of the basic stuff that you need, and it's really easy to specify other things you want to load. And there's all our stuff.
Yep, there it is.
Boom, like super easy to just get right out of the box, use the stuff, be able to display things right here on the page.
Very
nice.
We can make this a little prettier.
Let's make it pretty. Well, let's use some of the beautify stuff to make this look not quite as rudimentary.
Yep. So where Coalesce makes it really easy to do all your API stuff, Beautify is kind of what makes it really easy to do your UI stuff. And you don't need to use Beautify with Vue. You can use Bootstrap or whatever other things you want to use.
We just provide some things out of the box. Like right now, we're just using straight Beautify stuff. There are a few things that are built in Coalesce on top of Beautify with respect to doing inputs and things like that. You can totally not use that, but it works really easily doing it this way if you want to do that. It's just some shortcut stuff.
Yeah. So this V container, it's just going to put some automatic padding. There we go. So it's not up against everything.
It's just so much better.
A little bit nicer. Slightly more modern looking. We'll get even better. So instead of this div, I'm actually going to do a V card.
And part of it is just knowing what you can use when, like what looks good and kind of what situations. There's a whole bunch of different things you can do, and just go through that Beautify documentation, see what they've done. It really is, in my opinion, kind of it's a beautiful framework, and it works really well. There are some rough edges in places, but in general, it's super nice.
Yep. And then I'm going to put a V chip here, and we'll
basically you have a card with the title and then a bunch of chips that are each one of the little items, and boom.
And then I'm also going to put a V card text because that's going to add some nice padding around these V chips to match that title. And the last thing that you can do is you can kind of separate this title even more, the V sheet.
Ooh.
And what that is going to do is allow us to put a color, whatever our secondary color is going to be. There we go. So it looks a little bit nicer.
That's great. Now let's put a little bit of space in between those chips. Like
chips.
They look a little bit weird all there, right out there by themselves. So.
Yeah. So here you can just do a class, and then there's M for margin, P for padding, and then you have M left, right, top, bottom, y-axis, x-axis, and then you can put A for all.
Yep. And then you just choose a number, and it's essentially every number is 4 pixels.
Yep. And
so
I think
if you choose one, it's going to be 4 pixels. So
I think
MX2,
you can go up to 16.
Yeah, it's up to 16 times 4, so it's like 48. So it's a lot. It's a lot of space. There's a lot of different options there. So that just sounds good.
Yeah, let's do 4 per each. I think MX1 is pretty.
MX1, yeah, great. Just a little bit of space. Just give it a little bit of extra room. And we could have just put 2 on the right hand side if we wanted to keep that one, but it's just good. Okay, so we have a nice little list of questions. If we would have had more questions, the other questions would have just listed right down below a card for each one.
Yep.
Super easy. Well, we probably have time to just look at, what happens if we want to click on this? And maybe we can get started with that. But really, we should talk about componentization first.
Yeah.
Because when you start to talk about interactions, you then need to store some data. Like, for example, we're going to select one of these things. And right now, the context of our page is every question, all the questions. And that's not a good context because we don't have anywhere to store something like, what was the answer that I clicked on for this question? So I could have multiple things that I clicked on. And so when you think about doing componentization, you think about, okay, where am I going to need to store information? And what does that information look like? In this case, we want to be able to store what a person clicked on so we can then determine whether that thing is green or red or whatever that we want to be able to show some kind of result. And so for each question, we want to know that. So it probably makes sense to build a component for each question. And then we're going to iterate on this page. And then we're going to have a component that is going to then display each question. So let's just go ahead and build that.
Yeah.
So show us how we're gonna like put that.
So basically this card, we're just gonna take this. I'm not gonna cut it. I'm just gonna copy it because I actually want to keep this for loop here. And we're gonna go make a new component. We're gonna call it question.
So in the components folder, so your SRC in the components folder, you're just gonna put a question card.view. Great.
Yep. And it's gonna be laid out the exact same way.
I'll use templates.
Put that in there, and we'll kind of fix this in a second.
Our script.
Whoops. There we go. And then we do not need this for loop.
You don't need the key either because that's going to be handled at top level. But everything else is going to have to be handled.
Yep.
So the problem is we don't have a question object. So we have to now go back. Let's modify the page.
Yep.
Because we're going to have to pass the question into our component.
Yeah.
And somehow we want to do that so that TypeScript works and all the things are really smooth.
So you can see I'm just going to get rid of this card completely. I'm going to keep this whole for loop and just call this our question.
And you just name it whatever your file is.
Yep. And you can do Pascal or you can do this kebab casing, which that's kind of a preference, but you should pick one.
Yeah, and use it consistently. I like to do that because then it's really obvious which stuff are my components.
Yes, that's why I like to do it too.
And he doesn't even need a close tag. You just get to do a self-closing.
Yep.
Self-closing tag and you're all good.
So let's think about how we're going to pass this question in. So you can use something called props. And with props, all you got to do is you say const props equals define props. It almost kind of did it there for us. Okay, it's not quite right. So we'll tab and then we'll fix this.
Yeah,
it thinks we're passing an object of the question, but we're just going to pass in the Coalesce version of it. So question, and it's going to be a question view model. There we go. Although it didn't autocomplete that for there we go. One of that.
Great. And in this case, we're having to put that import in. Every time you use one of the Coalesce models, you need to go ahead and do that. You could just import everything if you wanted, or import the namespace. We just tend to do it this way because it's really specific as far as just exactly what you need for this particular page.
Yeah. And that's what my autocomplete does for me, which is also kind of nice.
Right. So really, and the reason we have to do this is because we want the strong typing that TypeScript's going to give us. So we know that we have a prop coming in. The prop is called question, and its type is a question view model.
Yeah.
Now,
I could just do this here too, and that would be totally valid. But then I could pass anything in.
Right.
There's no verifying.
And you're not going to get any of the nice IntelliSense out of that. Now, if you notice up above, question is now not highlighted as being an error. So we now know that, hey, as long as you pass a question in, and it's not a question or null, like you could put question or null, but we're not doing that. We're just going to pass a question view model into this thing. So now we're not actually passing it now.
Yeah, we have to come over here. So you can see I have an error
There's
here.
an error, which is great. It's going to show us that we have a problem. The error checking here is really good, and it's going to catch most of the issues that you have. So here we can just literally just pass it in. And just remember that whenever you have that colon in front, it means it's an expression.
Yep. Otherwise, it's a string.
We're handing in the variable question. And in this case, it doesn't matter the order or anything like that. And in the case of V4, that's a for loop. It's not really an expression. It's a for loop.
Yep.
And we're back to where we started.
Yep. There we go.
So we really have now a complete kind of view only type scenario here. So
looks like we've made no progress.
Oh, come on. We have a whole nice page and it's great. Yeah, it is a little disappointing sometimes when you put these components in. But the nice thing is the components are super easy to refactor. Yes. So what I'm wondering is, let's go ahead and let's have in our next episode, we're going to go ahead and help and show you how to deal with click events and how to actually start doing things. And when we click it, we're going to show you which is the right answer. Did you get it right or wrong? And kind of handle some of those things.
Yeah.
Does that sound okay?
That sounds great.
Well, until next time, keep on doing Coalesce stuff.
Bye. Bye, guys.